Greetings and welcome. Today's piece is kind of a weird one. It's Louie Anderson going Super Saiyan, much to the awe and wonderment of Sonic the Hedgehog and Michael Myers. A friend of mine posted on popular social media site asking if anybody would be willing to or could do it, whatever. And I'm like, yes, I will do that. The wild part to me is it's for his son, who's like 10. And this kid, I'm gonna blame his dad, but this kid's into some, kind of wild stuff. Clearly, like Louie Anderson, comedian who I love, but it's clearly from the '90s and early 2000s. So that's really cool. Right now, we've just gotten through the basic Procreate sketching. I do this on some stuff, not on others. It really depends. This one really needs a lot of layout instead of burning through a lot of paper. And I do hand sketch, but instead of burning through a lot of paper, it's a little bit easier and more economical to do it Procreate. Plus, I have that cool little drawing video to add to these things, or post on TikTok or Instagram or wherever. Right now, using the light box, tracing out, trying to keep the lines really good and straight. My idea for this was to do a comic page sort of thing. I think of all the ideas I have, this one really popped out pretty easy. Plus, it gives me some time to stretch my very atrophied comic drawing muscles. Nothing big here. I'm going through, just gonna mark out the lines. I'm gonna come in and out and just talk, instead of talking the whole time, try to, go over the things that I'm doing when I think you may want to hear about what I'm doing. Yeah, that was good English. Yeah, just going through. One thing when I draw, like it's always refine. Like it's, as you go through, like when I did the Procreate drawing, I went through a few, refinements, trying to figure out where stuff was, redrawing bits and pieces. It didn't quite work. And even now, as I'm doing the inking, it's like, all right, well, this line may not work. Let me adjust this here. And then also on some of this stuff, it's just helpful to keep working on it. Plus, it may give you a new idea on a way to do something. And since you're still in the pencil stage, there's really not a problem going back. All right, I'll be back next time I see something that looks like, it needs me to comment on it. I'm going to say real quick, I'm really happy with the way Sonic the Hedgehog came out. Like, I'm happy with the whole thing. I really do love this one. But the problem with drawing characters like Sonic, they're artists who have a very clear style, and I allegedly do, but then there's certain things, like this sort of thing, you want Sonic the Hedgehog to look like Sonic the Hedgehog. And I think I managed to capture that. Michael Myers also looks really well. I lucked out and found a picture of the William Shatner mask they used for the original. Somehow being able to see that in its full fleshy colored glory really helped. We'll just take a little break here, and I'll be back next time I want to point something out for you. Talk to you in a bit. Okay, what I'm doing right here is I've got all these kind of energy waves, or Kirby crackle or Kirby dots. And instead of going through and redrawing those or tracing them all just like they are, just kind of making out these waves and sections of how I wanted to sort of build out. You know, like I could have gone through with the pencil and drawn each and every dot, but almost no one would do that in the pencil section, especially on a tracing like this. So now you get to see the cool easel I bought, because I've realized that I tend to draw everything flat down, which for some stuff isn't bad, but it can really mess up your perspective. Even though I am going to change off that, because I realize it's not how I've built up my arms and hand strength to really be able to draw this sort of stuff. But I'm going to keep practicing and doing it, especially when I don't do a Procreate sketch, like when I go straight to paper. It would be a good idea to have it more up front. I think I've had 1 or 2 pieces that I just had to do over and over again, like just the sketch, the pencil drawings, just to having it laid across, especially on longer paper. Like this is 9 by 12, so it's not always too bad, but I've done stuff on bigger sheets, a couple of cats and commissions. It just took forever to look right, and I was, it's because it's flat, I'm looking across it, so what I'm seeing out and drawing is in perspective at the angle I'm looking at it at, which is the wrong perspective. Just want to share that. Right here you can see me bulking out these letters. I have had kind of an idea. I don't quite stick with it when I get to the heavy inking, but it still came out really well. I think you get the idea of, like, the whole build. Like I said, refinement. All right, here we are. We're going to start with inking. I'll just keep talking since I'm here. Some of these bits move a little bit faster. I'm starting to do a lot of the outlines and stuff with dip pen. I love using it. I do not know the nib I'm using. I'll try to be better about that sort of thing. Kind of like when I get to the watercolors, I don't really know the names of a lot of the colors. Of course, I'll explain that when we get there. But yeah, doing a lot of the outlines. I decided to leave some of the finer line work, like in the face, and just some of the stuff instead of like doing the whole thing with this kind of very singular wave, not wavelength, ink width, or line width. That's line width. That's what I'm thinking of. I like to have differentials in line width. I think it adds a lot of dynamic feel to a picture. Also, since this one's done sort of an anime style, they'll do that a lot in anime and manga, however you want to say it. It's up to you. I'm not the boss. But yeah, just here you go. Just kind of going over, like I said, trying to, every now and then I'll see something I didn't quite like. I'll go back and I'll refine over it. Maybe trace a little, even from the tracing, just do a little bit different. All right, well, till next time, I'll be hanging around and back for you soon. So, I think this is the only spot where I did it this way. I'm adding in the Kirby crackle, and I started doing like this. Some of this is a learning process. Some of it's just breaking the dust off and the rust off. But yeah, I started on that one, went through with the pencils and kind of lined it out. I very quickly abandoned this and start, marking them in roughly. I'm using a mix here of a few different size technical pens. I think I got a 0.8, 0.08, 0.10, 0.12, and I got a really fine one that I think is like a 003. And going through, and then here in a little bit, I will not really abandon this. I'll keep using the pen parts of various things, but I'm gonna have to fill them in. So I end up deciding to use a brush and ink. See me add a little. Here we go. Yeah. Right before that, I was using the really fine tip one I have to add in some different like scuffs and scratches on it. Where he's been banged up before he went all the way out. Just hit the gold. And even doing this, I've done Kirby crackling stuff before. It's always, I don't do it enough to be super good at it, but it can be very fun to do. It's also kind of neat to use it and really portray the way energy builds and spreads. But yeah, I'm just, like I said, right now I'm just kind of the lines I pinned in, and then here in a minute I do keep a few in. I use a lot of these technical pens, or I will use the technical pens here in a minute to more dot out just like where I want it. I'm also using the brush to go ahead and go through like Sonic's nose, the iris, Louie's or pupil and stuff where I just need like a more black. A little bit of cross hatching here on Senior Myers. Add some depth. I think I did come back and just paint over those with the dark color, but yeah, you can see me now. I'm using, this is the finer tip one. I'm using it for some of these finer, much finer line work. All right, I'll be back in a few minutes. I decided to go through and just do the lettering and the, not really speech, but screen bubble with the brush. Once again, these are larger spaces. It's a little bit easier to fill them with just a brush full of ink. Now I will say another advantage of this, it allows me, it gives me a little bit more control over line weight than some of the other stuff. Like you can see, I'm really getting them fat towards the end. And I really want to go over the outline of the bubble or square or rectangle here. I don't have great form in a lot of inking. You really, in theory, should always pull. I have a bad habit of back pulling, really not pushing, but I will, instead of like going from top to bottom, I'll turn my hand in a weird way and go from bottom to top. Here we are. One thing I figured out I was doing this, we're doing these larger areas because I've got a lot of this crackle energy stuff I end up using. I may make little small circles and things, and then there are points where I just kind of, like you would with watercolors, where you really are just kind of mopping on the color, like you're really filling up those areas, still trying to keep the edges, nice and round like the bubbles and dots you get. But I thought y'all might want to hear some of my process while I was doing that. All right, here once again with the finer line pen, it's me doing the details of Louie's face. They'll come up they really will pop once I put the color in, but right now I do want outlines. That was, if you look at the Dragon Ball Z, especially the manga style, they do have outlines around a lot of it, like facial features, but I didn't want them to be super thick and fat, so I went to that pen. That did the dip pen around the collar, trying to use a little bit of a lighter hand. Also, I'm going through and filling in some spots that I missed when I first, missed during inking, and even some of them I missed tracing. So still that refine. Also, right now, trying to figure out how his suit, his undershirt are looking. Okay, so I'm mixing up here for the top. These are liquid watercolors. Mixing up red. I think it's just like true red and a little bit of burnt umber to kind of make it more of a brown. I'll do this a lot with watercolors, where I'll do the outlines instead of just in black. I'll do them in a darker version of the color. I think it adds a lot of, once again, I'd say, again, like dynamic shading, and just really gives it a more professional look at times. This will come back to kind of bite me, but it still works. So yeah, now here we are using the pen to Using, I think, the 1-2 to give me some of those bigger fat bubbles that I won't really kind of by themselves, but still round. So we'll keep going for a while, and as we get this done, I'll still be in and out. All right.
Well, you might think I'm just an average Joe, but I'm so damn fucking tired of being pushed around, standing on the verge and I'm ready to blow, ready to blow. Here we go, I'm ready to blow. I'm so tired of being pushed around. I won't quit until I hit the ground. I'm so fucking tired of being pushed around. I won't quit until I hit the ground. I'm so tired of being pushed around. I won't quit until I hit the ground.
Back on my poor inking practices. In theory, with inking besides always pulling down, you really do want to kind of go from left to right, top to bottom. It keeps your hand as much from getting in it, smearing it, especially when like using a dip pen. Like the ink is water soluble, or not water soluble, it's waterproof, but it also has to dry. And this hand and the other one, a little bit in Sonic Eyes and a few other spots, is because I just kind of go in no real order. I end up smudging like some of the ink on the hands, especially. And luckily, they're covered up with this Kirby Crackle, which I already had planned in. But that can be a real mess, especially after this, where I'm going to use this actual one and do the coloring over it. Because there's really, I mean, I can lift a little bit off, but once again, this ink is waterproof. So I can't just like pull it off like you can with watercolors. It's fairly well on there. Now these bits where it's going over the lines, I did this on purpose. I wanted them to look like it was exploding out throughout the panels, breaking them down. But I just felt like sharing that little quick tip. Try to do your ink in a more organized manner than I do, and maybe I'll be smart enough in the future to learn from my mistakes, which I probably won't, not gonna lie. But who knows? Maybe saying it out loud and trying to tell people my process will help me to get better at it. Another problem I regularly have, and this is not really as much of the drawing part, it's more of the recording the video. So I'm a bigger dude. If I'm not careful, my tummy will rub up against the table I draw on. So like a lot of times when you see this, it's kind of moving around. It is literally just my body. I do try to be mindful of it, but I also really get into the drawing sometimes, so I have a bad habit of hunkering down on the table. That's why on occasion on these projects you'll see my head and my bald spot on the back of my head kind of peek in for a little bit, but also that's why the table will often have this little wiggle. Another thing, if you want to record and draw, or not just you but me, just kind of be mindful of. Another thing to pay attention to, especially when you're using large or any ink, is you want to make sure you give it ample time to dry before you erase your pencils. I don't always erase my pencils. I actually do like the way they look in some of the watercolors. But things like this, I want to get as many of them out as possible. And I used to have a really bad habit of not waiting long enough. Like, you want to wait, like, I mean, when I say dry, I mean bone dry, or else you will smear your inks. Like, you may have the greatest inked picture of all time, but you will just smear it everywhere. All right, now we're getting ready to start actually painting. So I'm gonna tape these. It's another thing I usually don't worry about, like the way my style works, the way a lot of stuff is a lot looser. But because I want those clean outside lines or as clean as possible, I am taking just a little bit extra time. Luckily, I have the lines themselves as a guide, like the side gutters, just to make sure I have the tape on. Here we go. We start with ink. So I'm gonna start with the Super Saiyan Power Blast Wave things. Just going in with that. It's a little bit. I think it's lemon yellow and a golden yellow mix, and try to make the edges a little bit darker. Like, this is just the first coat. You're gonna layer these on, or glaze them on. That's the way I do it. That's how I get my really bright, really intense colors in watercolor. Is just you paint a layer on, you let it dry, you come back with another one. Jason's suit, Michael Myers suit here. It's a bit of black with a bit of like couple of darker blues I have. Using a little bit of it same thing with a little bit more black mixed in for shading on the face. I don't do a lot of dynamic shading on this one. That's where you would use contrasting colors. Like, so this is blue, so the contrast of blue for the shading would be, stop the story for a second. Lucked out one of the pure, like the true blues. I think this might be the Maui blue. I do know some of their names, but it gives me a really good color for Sonic here. But yeah, with dynamic shading, you use contrasting colors. So Sonic is blue. Across the color wheel from blue is orange. All right? So you would add that in. It kind of adds a gray-brown, really can give you a really dynamic, really sharp-looking shading. What I'm using here is more tonal shading, I think would be the right word. I'm just using more intense, less diluted colors on it. Like where I use the Maui blue on Sonic, I will go back over in a little while and use the same one with just less water in it. I think it gives it a very nice, clean-looking shading. I go back and forth on using black, just black to make things darker. Like, I do it in some of the stuff. You mix up, if you want to do a shadow, mix a little bit of black with a little bit of blue, or whatever base color you want. And then give you, all right, so here's another. You can see that bleed on top of the tile where I used in that reddish brown. I learned doing this, those watercolor inks or liquid watercolors don't really dry as well as I'm used to. I end up making worse. You'll also start seeing it once I start getting to the shirt. I left out, but I also used the blue I bought to do the edges on the shirt and the lines. Once again, to just add a little bit of contrast. It's a cool look. Plus, with a pen, I can get a much cleaner straight line than I personally have the ability to with the brush. Yeah, you can see right there, I'm using a more pure version of both the blue and the skin color I came up with to add shading. And I'll just continue to add that in until I get it the shadows where I really want them. It also helps. You'll put in the first layer of paint, and it won't look like, it'll look really pale and really like washed out. You can just add a little bit more. You can add a little bit more. Say, one thing I did learn, it was an accident because of the tie, that I needed more red in the skin tone. So that's what I did. The skin tone is a mix of lemon yellow, red, and I think yellow ochre, and then I think I added a little bit of orange to it. So, and then and you want to keep that watery so you don't make him too dark, or any of the characters too dark to begin with, because you can always let it dry and add more. And I'm going to do the same thing with Michael's hair and on the suits, but yeah. So where I'm doing right now, I'm cutting in the background. I originally wanted Dragon Ball Z. I always loved the way their mountains and like their greenery and stuff looked. It had this kind of otherworldly sort of shape to it. But I decided just to kind of go with some really basic, like the idea of skies and a bit of cloud, and then there's some, browns and reds at the bottom to show dirt. I did actually look up and watch videos of various characters going Super Saiyan to see what the skies went. I really like the one on Namek. First time Goku goes Super Saiyan because it has this wild kind of cloudy, like dark clouds of green with like lighter green showing through. Also, you can see here, I'm still adding bits of the skin color. I've added a little bit more reds, I think, at this point. A little bit more orange, give it a little bit more depth. One thing I also did was when I was doing the edges of the Super Saiyan Power Blast, I added a little bit more of that golden yellow and a little tinge of orange, so it looks, more like it's emanating and hotter in the center. Also, another thing, as I go through, the suit it starts out really gray. Oh, you'll be able to see here where I forgot to put orange around the Kirby crackler on the hand, so I went through and threw in some there just to have that early build of power. But yeah, with the suit, as I paint it, sides getting darker, I little by little end up adding a little bit more blue, and I think I end up with some purple in it just to kind of add a bit of a sheen and color variation. So it's not just like a solid gray suit, even though the gray I'm using is a mix of blues and really dark blue and some black. I'm using a bit of that red orange I've gotten to really tip out, have some under him to get the ground some contrast and weight. Yeah, here we go. I think this is just before. I think the next time is when I add in the purple. You really can't super tell, but it does really make the color pop. Which is one thing with Louie Anderson I noticed over the years. He was always starting out, he was a little bit, I think, more modest of a dresser. There were a lot of khakis and blazers, which as a larger person myself, I know those are sometimes the easiest options for clothing if you want anything kind of dressy, but he had some really good suits on and off there.
Social media and sleepless nights, final call for the deadline flight. All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity. Spoonful, spoonful, just a spoonful a day. Spoonful, spoonful, the doctor says it's okay. Spoonful, spoonful, just a spoonful a day. Spoonful, spoonful, the doctor says it's okay.
Alright, so now, because when you look at some of the better renderings and drawings of them going Super Saiyan, they have like these flashes, because the idea is you're enveloped in this golden power flame. So what I'm doing, well, now I'm messing around with white. I've pulled out my white gouache because I'm going to mark some in. I am using a fixed couple bleed overs because I'm not necessarily the best at staying in the lines, but I bought, you can see this little square or little bit on the bottom right hand side. I bought these marker pens and they're weird. I need to play around with them more. I can't tell if they're, when you put it on, you really don't see anything. But then as it sits and dries, it becomes more opaque. It's kind of a weird sensation. But what I end up doing is I just use my gouache like I probably should have started with and kind of mark where I want them to, like these streaks of power to be. And then also now I'm adding some more. See, this does have some purple in it. But yeah, I'll go back to them here in a minute, and I'll start adding a little bit of the yellow and a little bit of the more golden color, and kind of having more of a swooshy idea. These early lines just kind of serve as almost guides. So yeah, it's still just the kind of refine and build up. I do tell you, yeah, okay, this clearly has purple because I'm adding more to the suit, like in the upper corner, just showing the hand. It's just, it just starts out, it's just not quite saturated enough for my liking. Doing a little bit more also with the ground. More just almost a pure red there, washed over. It's kind of right now, it's more of, clean up, filling bits in. Really adding the final touches as we're in the home stretch. Just taking a quick second here. This song is called Panacea by The Foundling. I use Epidemic Sound for my music. It's all royalty free. I pay them a monthly fee for the service. This song kicks. I just want to take a second to point out how much I like this song. All right, now I'm going back through and I'm redefining some of those blue lines. The liquid watercolors I use, the blue is cobalt blue. Also using to add some details to the tie. The red for the tie is vermilion. And the other color, I think I said raw umber maybe, or burnt sienna, I don't remember. But it's actually called sepia, in case you want to pick some of these up for your own. All right, here we go. Right there, touching in the eye with the pen. And then I actually do right there, I use some contrast, dynamic coloring, but it left a little bit of a lighter tone, but I ended up just going back in with the gouache to really get the eye shines the way I want them. But yeah. And now just to sign my name, I did this one a little bit different. I wrote my name at the bottom and then gave the date. And then I'm going to come back in here in a second. Just sign it where I usually do in the corner. And then, that's it. This is our picture. Here it is. Louie Anderson has broken through the limit wall and gone full Super Saiyan. I'm really happy with this one. I hope you enjoyed watching. And I'll be back next week.